Also, the other thing to remind you about is the Confessions podcast. There was a new, fresh one which was laundered, I think, just on Friday. And it's a particularly good one, I think. A very, very good episode. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. Down the podcast
Laundered.
shop. Laundered. Yes, freshly laundered.
Freshly laundered.
I think that's the correct terminology.
Definitely not that.
Today's confession welcomes Holly back.
Yes.
Which is all the fans, the fan club, very, very pleased. Get well, Susie. She's not feeling 100%. So, yes, I definitely have to say, this particular confession has a 12 certificate, particularly if you're eating.
Excellent news. I love that.
Okay?
Yeah.
The warning having been broadcast. Here is today's tale, which comes from Zeb. Thank you, Zeb. Father Simon and the Fellowship of Forgiveness. I beseech you... I don't even know if I'm going to get away with this. Anyway, it's Holly's fault if I don't. I beseech you for forgiveness for a misdemeanor which I am sure will bring Brother Matt great delight. Those of the listening fraternity who live out in the sticks may have noticed an increase in farm traffic over the last few weeks as silage season has firmly begun.
Very good.
This is the time of year when many a farmer cuts their fields of grass, transports it back to the yard and stores it in preparation for winter time, ready to be fed to their cattle. With a glimmer of hope in the weather forecast and a willing team, we have thus far managed to cut, collect and store 268 acres worth of grass, which is a good start. What comes next is the spreading of a plentiful byproduct from the cattle on said fields, which acts as a natural fertilizer, increasing the crop of grass ready for the next cut. Circle of life and all that, as Matt would say.
Yeah.
It was whilst undertaking this rather unpleasant job that the following events took place. Having just unloaded my tanker, I set off to return to the yard, travelling a short track from a field to a nearby road. However, as I approached, I could make out a van blocking my way, parked at a diagonal across the track with its nose brushing the hedge, and a man crouched on the near side of it, seemingly unaware of a very large vehicle approaching. That was me. Could it be a bird spotter, I wondered? Or perhaps he had lost something. However, as I drew my massive tractor closer, it became apparent that this was not the case. To put this into context, our farm straddles the A30 in West Devon, the main route into and out of much of Devon and Cornwall for locals, holidaymakers and business folk alike. As a result, a great multitude of people pass the farm daily, barely taking note, except for the nearly home trees on the neighbouring farm. Very Cornish listeners will know, apparently. Okay, I'm sure that'll be explained. However, for the volume of travellers, there are no service stations for a good few miles each way, which I can only assume was the cause of this man's plight. As I got closer, it became clear that in essence, the gentleman was engaged in a similar activity to me, albeit in a more direct manner. Hopefully that's vague enough for Tea Time Radio. However, given his hiding behind his van and keeping lookout toward the road, to my utter disbelief, he still failed to notice me as I drew within 20 yards in my noisy tractor. What to do? I had work to do, and this man was clearly unaware of my need to proceed. With that in mind, I stepped out of my tractor and cautiously approached yard by yard. How could it be? This man still failed to notice me as I drew closer. Was it denial of the unfortunate circumstances? Was it brazen defiance? I couldn't fathom it, but he left me no choice. I approached and tapped him on the shoulder.
What?
This turned out to be a bad choice, Father Simon. The man turned out to be wearing headphones.
Oh, no.
And so had been blissfully unaware of my presence until this particular moment. Consequently, I caused him such a shock that he jumped, slipped, and sat in the very spot where he'd been hovering. This had not gone as I'd expected. He then leapt to his feet, returned his trousers to their rightful position, and looked at me in horror, but with very little to say, as he appeared to not speak much English. Desperately trying to maintain some composure, I gestured that I needed to pass with my vehicle and could he please move his van. Evidently, the shame and embarrassment were too much to bear, and with this he cleaned up,
Oh, boy.
threw it into the footwell and jumped into his seat and retreated with haste. By this point...
into the footwell?
Yes. By this point, I was in no fit state to drive a wheelbarrow, let alone a tractor, so I took 10 minutes to recover, whilst calling my two brothers to tell them the story. As such, I throw myself on your mercy. I had no intention to cause such misfortune, and can only imagine the discomfort and unpleasantness of the drive home for that poor man. Can you please find it in me? Can you find it in you to forgive, please? Zeb with a farming tale. I did. Okay, if you can now turn the radio up if you are of a sensitive nature. Thank you very much, Zeb, for that. Sister Holly, welcome back.
Hello. Well, it's very nice to be back. I think the thing is, Zeb, if you were the person in the van who had done this, then this would be an obvious not forgiven. Although I'm still not going to forgive you, because I think you should have been a bit more aware. He had headphones on. Couldn't you have seen that whilst you were approaching him? I think you should have seen that maybe coming. Also, did you really desperately need to get past that van? Surely there was another route you could have gone, could have avoided it perhaps, and none of this would have happened. It's also just a very, very gross and sick and wrong story from start to
Sick
end.
and wrong.
And so that's why I'm not forgiving at all.
That's your three-worder for most days. Sick and
is.
wrong.
Love
Brother
it.
Matthew.
Who wears headphones when that particular act is being performed? No one does. That seems a bit weird. It does. And also throwing it into the footwell. What on earth is going on? The whole point was to not have it in the car. For that, it was very, very, very funny story. What a way to start the week. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
No wonder Zeb then called his brothers up.
Call his brother.
Incapable of driving.
Oh, wow.
Okay, people's verdict, please. 61054. First word is Simon. Do you forgive Zeb? Yes or no? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a rather fine farming confession from Zeb, who was on his tractor muck spreading, and he came across a guy. Anyway, you had to be there,
Yes.
and he was involved. And there was and he got in the car and he drove away. Anyway, there was more to it. Matt, what have you got?
Angie Phillips says, I can hardly stand up for laughing so much. Maybe he owned a dog and thought in his panic that he should take his business home with him. Thank you for giving me a fabulous subject to discuss at a birthday dinner tonight.
Oh, nice.
Henry, who's currently silaging, says, forgiven. I'm a farmer near a main road in Scotland, and this happens regularly, but they leave their used wipes in my fields. And finally, Emma Tate in Liverpool says, not forgiven. Personally, I think the calling of not one but two brothers is what makes this particular confession unforgivable.
It's a very, very interesting point.
Yeah.
Zeb, thank you very much. That's not his real name, obviously. But anyway, he gets the smart speaker. And if you fancy a smart speaker, send us in a very fine confession. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same vein.
No, please not.
It doesn't have to involve silage. 61054. First word is Simon. Anyway, we don't need a speed wagon. We need a drinks trolley. That's what we need. But
very
what
good.
do we grab from it today, Suze, who is now a little bit... Are you better now?
Yes.
That's very good. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Let's say yes.
Have you taken something healthy then from the trolley?
No, it's got lime juice in it. I've gone for a margarita. Because why not?
It's good for
why
what
not?
ails you, basically.
Yeah.
That's what
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Tequila, 2-second lime juice. Delicious.
Thank you very much for today's health tip. Today's confession is signed Number One Son from Nottingham.
Okay.
Father Simon and the Compassionate Collective. I am seeking forgiveness for a sin I committed 3 years ago. It's one that haunts me to this day and plays on my consciousness frequently. I'm writing to you and the team so that I can finally be unburdened by my misdemeanor. My tale begins in April 2021. I was in my second term at my new sixth form college, studying history, politics and English language. My teachers probably saw me as an engaged, conscientious, well-mannered student who wanted to do well. My mum and dad, who have always been my biggest fans and gave me love and gave me the loving sobriquet that I signed this email with, likely saw me in the same light. So that's why it's signed Number One Son from Nottingham, because that's how he is referred to by his mum and dad. Though the country had emerged from the worst days of the pandemic, a lot of remote learning measures were still in place once I arrived at college, and though we were finally allowed to conduct some in-person lessons by the spring of 21, we still had to submit assignments online using Microsoft Teams. At home, I was reliant on my family's trusty dark blue laptop. With the scene set, here is my sorry tale. I've always been somewhat skeptical of technology, an unusual thing for a young person these days. It was for that reason, though, that I always did my assignments on the day my teachers gave me them and uploaded them online with plenty of time to spare. As I said, I'm quite a well-mannered person, but something about machines playing up make me really mad, make me see red. On one fateful day, I arrived home from college, only to realize that one of my assignments was due that very evening, a politics essay on whether the American president had more power than Congress. I had written the essay and had submitted it the weekend before, but when I checked my phone, I was horrified to see that nothing had been handed in, and there was only 30 minutes left until the deadline.
No. Uh-oh.
Determined not to let my pristine reputation with my teachers be sullied, I retrieved my laptop from the dining room and went into the living room to sit down and submit my essay. No need to panic, I thought to myself. You've completed the assignment. You can upload it in plenty of time. I opened my laptop only to discover that it was running low on charge. No problem, I'll just grab my charger. I placed my laptop on the footstool, a large cream square with a hinged lid. That means it's perfect for storage. But where was my charger? I'd searched in all the usual places, kitchen, dining room, next to the sofa. Nowhere to be seen. I was getting increasingly anxious. I was running out of time. I looked at the clock, 20 minutes. Where was the stupid thing? And then I thought to myself, what if Mum or Dad had tidied it away? I looked in a couple of drawers and boxes to find nothing. The footstool. What about that?
Yes.
I dashed into the living room, pulled open the footstool, and sure enough, the snaking wires of my charger were neatly tucked inside. Of course, in my haste, what I'd forgotten was that my laptop was on top of the footstool lid. Like a slingshot, the force of me throwing the lid open sent my laptop flying. I saw it flip in midair, like my life flashing before my eyes, with the blue body flapping like a bird in the sky. And then gravity kicked in. The laptop came crashing towards the floor, with the screen hitting the corner of our wooden coffee table in the process. When I picked it up, I found it still working, but the screen was disfigured by a huge crack like a spider's web across it. The hinges, too, had been warped. It was a very sorry state of affairs. Luckily, I managed to hand my assignment in with 15 minutes to spare. I called in Mum and Dad from the kitchen and explained what had happened. My parents, though annoyed at the damage inflicted on the laptop, took it rather well. Not to worry, said Dad. We can have a screen replaced. I was pretty annoyed with myself, though. What kind of idiot forgets to move their laptop off a footstool lid before opening it? Well, Father Simon, I was no idiot, but I was a liar. I had made it all up. I had told my parents a story that had never happened. Let's rewind 20 minutes. I was flapping around like a headless chicken searching for my charger. Luckily, I'd worked out that it must have been tidied away and been taken in and put in the footstool, moving my laptop before lifting the lid. I was about to hand my assignment in, just about to. My cursor was hovering over the submit button, and then the stupid thing ran out of charge, completely dead. Though I had plugged the darn thing in, I'd forgotten to turn the switch in the wall on. In a fit of rage, as I told you earlier, technology going wrong drives me crazy. I pushed the laptop off the footstool on purpose. It fell, it hit the ground, and the screen cracked. It was no laptop manslaughter, it was murder. And instead of telling my parents the truth, I painted it out to be an accident, all to save my own skin. I would like, therefore, to seek forgiveness for the crime and the cover-up. First, from my lovely parents, the kindest parents a boy could wish for destroying their laptop. My dad did get the screen repaired at considerable expense, only for the hinges and frame to be unsalvageable. It sits in a mangled heap on top of our dining room cabinet still, 3 years later. We have never got a replacement laptop. My poor parents have to read their emails and do their mobile banking on their phones, something I see them frequently struggling with. I'd also like to seek forgiveness from my college, which kindly lent me a laptop for the remainder of my time in sixth form on the grounds that it was accidentally destroyed. To them I lied too. I only wanted to make my parents and teachers proud. Now they know the truth. I expect they shan't be. If this is read out on your wonderful show, I will give my parents the smart speaker. It is the least they deserve. I will not profiteer from my heinous felony. My parents and I religiously listen to your show and hear confessions while we're eating dinner. I suspect there might be a rather icy atmosphere around the table when they realise the truth tonight. Well, I always like it when this is the moment of the reveal.
Yes, indeed.
So number one son from Nottingham may well not be number one any longer as he's slipping down the rankings with you, Sister Susie.
Well, he is indeed. I just feel like this was you just weren't very organised, were you? And you know, maybe a temper was not a good thing either. So I just feel like you should have been a bit more organised. You said you submitted it a week before. Well, that's really good. However, you didn't check it between then and the time of the deadline. What time is 20 minutes before to check whether it actually went through or not? So I just think set a reminder, but a little bit earlier next time for me.
Right.
And laptop murder indeed. You definitely don't deserve forgiveness, I'm afraid, so you're not getting it from me.
And he lied to his parents.
Yes, he did. We've had lying to your kids, and that's fine, obviously. Lying to your parents is new ground for us, isn't it? And so I'm going to forgive, because, you know, lying to the parents, it was fine. And the smart speaker, literally the least he can do for his parents is give them a smart speaker. But really, isn't it the system? Because, you know, having to give your homework in on Teams, that doesn't seem fair. Not when you could just be handing it in like normal. So not needing to do it on the laptop, that feels like a hostage to fortune to me. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Well, I think if we can blame Microsoft Teams for everything,
let's do that.
I think that's a very good thing. Okay, well, number one son from Nottingham might not be getting the forgiveness of his parents. I don't know. Does he get your forgiveness? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from someone who signed off number one son from Nottingham, and he painted a picture of him and his parents sitting around listening to the confessions every single day. But it's a story of the smashed up family laptop and how he lied to his parents. The icy atmosphere around the table, we can only imagine. What's the people's verdict, Matt?
Forgiven, says Eugene. I can't stand technology either. I don't understand why it didn't submit properly in the first place. But not forgiven, says Pam in very sunny Dundee. By calling himself number one son, he got my backup because I was number three daughter. Sounds like a smug sausage to me who didn't have the wit to check his essay had actually gone and then threw a toddler-type tantrum and lied his face off. Hope his mum and dad put him on dirty dishes for months.
Smug sausage.
A smug sausage, yes.
Right.
And finally, not forgiven, say the parents of number one son. We cannot compute how he would lie to us. If he had a sibling, he would no longer be number one son.
Oh, I see. So actually calling him number one son was sort of ironic,
Yes.
in as much as there aren't any others.
The only one son, yes.
That's sort of like the definitive. It doesn't matter what everyone else says, because the parents of number one son, presumably number one dad and number one mum,
correct,
have said not forgiven.
Yes.
But he does get the smart speaker, which he has already pledged to them.
Very least.
That's the way it works. Your confession, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's just trundling past, and there it goes. Fortunately, we have a qualified member of staff to grab something that's very responsible from the trolley. Where are we going today, Suze?
I've grabbed three glass bottles of Orangina. Is what I've grabbed today. Sparkling orange.
Okay, that's very good. Can I have mine with... Matt doesn't want one. I'll have his with an ice. A slice of ice, please.
Yes,
some vodka.
Ice and a nice slice of orange would be delicious. And Matt, if you wanted to make it alcoholic, obviously you could put gin in it if you
Gin, yeah.
I mean, Matt's
like. Don't
obsessed.
do it every time.
Okay, today's confession comes from Gordon. Gordon, thank you very much indeed for sending in tonight's tale. Gordon gets the smart speaker. Father Simon, Matthew, Holly, Susie, the Bell, and everyone else, you might be in a position to forgive me for this horror. I really loved the confession the other day by the Bristolian who spoke in an Irish accent when working in an Australian bar for 5 months.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
My enjoyment of this was tarnished, however, as it rekindled a long-buried memory of speaking in an accent myself many years ago.
Here we go.
Oh, dear.
It's fine. It's not going to stretch me too much. And my confession date's from 1991, but the seeds of it grow from 2 years earlier. Like all 14-year-olds at the time, I had to choose options of subjects that I wanted to study for my GCSEs. For most people, secondary school is a place you attend from 11 until you're 16 or 18 if you stay on for A-levels. Unfortunately, my secondary schooling was different. It was split into a school that we attended from 11 until 14 and then a completely different school that we went to from 15 to 18 when people from other schools joined as well. This made choosing options difficult because you didn't know any of the teachers that would be teaching you when you chose your subjects and changed schools. So at 14, I chose French as an option because I really liked my teacher at the time of choosing. Sadly, when we switched schools, I had an entirely new teacher and a mostly new set of classmates. This wasn't good, and I instantly regretted choosing it. I should have switched subjects, but I obviously had more important things going on at the time and chose the easy option to stick it out. I really shouldn't have. Without wishing to offend anyone there at the time, I was in a class of wild, feral, uncontrollable morons.
Okay.
Just speaking plainly.
Yep.
And we were taught in Joey from Friends type speech marks by a teacher who had no desire whatsoever to either change their behaviour or teach us any French. I should have risen above it, ignored the lunatics sharing my airspace and focused on trying to pass. Instead, I gave up, like everyone else in the room, and watched the wild, untamed monkeys throw things around for a few hours each week. When the GCSE exam approached, we had to undertake a one-on-one oral exam, in addition to the written papers. I had learnt absolutely nothing from the 2 years that my supposed teacher had been supposedly teaching me. I had, though, during that time been enjoying the weekly BBC sitcom Allo Allo on the television.
Of course. Well, here we go.
When my turn for the French oral exam arrived, worth 25% of my GCSE, I entered with very little hope for what lay ahead. My teacher greeted me, set the cassette tape running, and proceeded to converse with me in French. I regret now how I responded, but at the time it was honestly the best I could muster. He would run through the usual role-play scenarios, pretending to be in France and stopping me and asking me how to get to the train station or how the weather was going to be tomorrow. For my responses, I became René Artois from Allo Allo. I spoke English with a mock French accent and substituted all the words for Z instead. The railway is on the left. Takes a third turning on the right and walk for 200 meters. Then takes a second left and you will have reached the railway station. I gave these answers with a straight face. My teacher received them with a straight face also. He never broke. Not once. He would hear my allo allo response and then carry on completely unaffected. The weather tomorrow will be rain. The sun will come out from behind the clouds in the afternoon, giving a temperature in the mid-20s.
Wow.
Gordon says, having been a teacher myself now for over 20 years, obviously not French, geography, I feel rather ashamed of all this. I imagine that the guy, I don't remember his name, absolutely hated me. He sat there, hearing my pathetic answers and probably inside wanted to throw me through the window. I imagine if I had dropped in the phrase, I shall say this only once, he may well have punched me. At the end, though, he thanked me in French. I understood that. Merci.
Very good.
Au revoir. And out I went, never to see him or speak French ever again. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for my actions. I should have tried harder. I let myself down. I received an overall E grade from my French GCSE. Frankly, I'm amazed I got that.
Yes.
Merci et au revoir. Gordon. Now, I'm not sure at the time an E sometimes it's like a low pass, but maybe I'm guessing an E is like bottom grade.
Yeah, let's say that. Yeah.
Just above you, I'm thinking. Anyway, so I think... Gordon, thank you. So it's 1991, French oral. No one has ever done this, I would have thought, and got away with it. Sister Susie, what do you say to Gordon?
Oh, well, merci, Gordon. I think very, very well. It was very, very funny. I got an E in classical civilization.
Wow.
When I was A-level. Didn't particularly do very well with that. But I did dip out on French at GCSE because I knew that I wasn't very good at it. And I feel like Gordon should take some responsibility here because, his classmates may have been, distraction and rubbish and the teacher may not have been good, but you have to take some responsibility for what you've learned. I can't believe you didn't learn absolutely nothing at all. I feel like he could have done a little bit better, and as funny as it was, genius, hello, I'm afraid I can't forgive him.
Yeah, I thought that's probably what you'd say. Brother Matthew.
Oh, I am definitely going to forgive. And here are the reasons why. Number one, he kept it going. You can probably do that for one sentence, but to keep it going all the way through and to have the teacher going, that's normal. I'm not going to say something in French.
Right.
Yes. Oh, outstanding. But also, there was no teaching. He wasn't being taught anything in these classes. What was he supposed to do? So, yes, definitely forgiven. Well done.
Okay, well, that's the way it went. I was expecting it to break like that in the studio. But the question is, does he get your forgiveness? Do you forgive Gordon, yes or no? On the text, please, 61054. First word is Simon. And just before the news, our confession from Gordon. Écoutez et répétez about the horrors of a French oral exam, particularly when the whole class and the teacher had given up a couple of years ago. And that's why Gordon, who is a teacher himself now, a geography teacher, became René Artois from Allo Allo and spoke in English but with a outrageous French accent. So the people's verdict has arrived, est arrivé, and...
oh, very good.
What do you have?
Well, everyone forgives.
Right.
So Chris Hale says, I'm sat here in my van with tears streaming down my face. Totally forgiven. Joshua in Lowestoft, totally forgiven for the confession. It's the system to blame. The teacher who didn't want to teach them. He tried with the accent, so he can't ask for anything more. Great accents, though, Simon. Again, brilliant.
Thank you,
and
Joshua.
Helen says, forgiven. My daughter has done something similar during her French GCSE, but we added a hon in French after each sentence. She too got an E.
Clearly, that's what happens.
Yes.
It's not possible to go any lower. Okay, so it may well be that's inspired a confession of your own. Let us know. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. 5:47. Roll in the drinks trolley. And what do we grab from it this fine evening, Susie? What do you reckon?
Well, the sun's come out today. It's better than it was yesterday. So I thought a beer called Wanna Go to the Sun, Pale Ale, Citra and Eldorado hops, peachy and citrusy. It's very lovely.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. There'll be more drinks, obviously, with Nigel, because it's a foodie Thursday. He's got some Thai fish cakes, I believe. More details after 6. More of the kitchen's greatest hits. Today's confession comes from Derek. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. My name is Derek. Last year, our son, Rob, not his real name, was one interview away from his dream job. 5 years after leaving university and furnished with a solid degree. Solid, I think, sounds a little bit as though disappointing.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
He said about working his way up to this particular appointment. He started with an administrator's role to get him in the door. Several promotions later, felt it was time to go for the job he'd always felt was his destiny. He got through 4 interviews, was down to the last 4 candidates. Sadly, this is where it went wrong. Stumbling under pressure, he was told that he was not ready for the big time just yet, and he was devastated. After a tearful call to mum, as in his mum, it was suggested he came home for the weekend to the bosom of the family and regroup. Surely enough, Rob caught the next train from London to his Midlands home. On arrival, he was given all the hugs and attention I could only dream of.
Right, okay.
All I seemed to hear for the next 24 hours was, get Rob this and get Rob that. Rob doesn't want to watch that. Rob wants a cup of tea. Where's Rob's favourite biscuit? Rob was sitting there. You get the picture. Knowing best as I do, I decided to take Rob to the local pub the following night. This will do the job, I thought. A few beers with the old uns in the Black Horse will put all his worries behind him. Unfortunately, what I didn't bargain for was an elderly farmer friend who made a point of telling Rob he was wasting his time in his current job and should have a complete career change. Sometimes you just have to admit it that you're not up to the job. Anyway, Rob looked bereft. Thanks, farmer. After a few beers, we returned home in silence. He seems to have become worse than before, said his mum. But I think Derek means my wife.
My wife, yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
My wife put Rob's favourite show on television and put out Rob's go-to treat, a selection of pizzas. Rob sat quietly watching Saturday night TV, barely looking at the pizza. I happily sat demolishing loads of it with a bottle of Chianti by my side. An hour or so later, Mum retired to bed to leave father and son to bond. We watched Match of the Day, but clearly Rob wasn't in the bonding mood. I'll be fine tomorrow, Dad, I'm just going to bed. And off he went. Having had a few beers at the pub and a few beers at home and some smashing pizza, the wine was going down perfectly. I nonchalantly reached across to grab the bottle and have a top-up. I knew I'd be able to do this without looking, because after a few beers and whilst watching Match of the Day, one can do this kind of thing, right? Wrong. 2/3 of a bottle of red emptied itself under the small table next to my chair. The carpet colour, well, it was light green. I screamed upstairs in one of those screaming whispers. Rob! Rob! He appears. What's up? Come down quickly and bring some dark towels. There's red wine everywhere, your mum will kill me. Anyway, Rob comes down with a variety of towels. He fetched a bucket of warm soapy water and we set about scrubbing the carpet furiously. It was strange, but my look of abject fear was mirrored by Rob's look of pure delight. Dad was in it deep, and Rob's schadenfreude had taken over. After a good half hour of scrubbing and wringing out ruby-stained towels, we seemed to have cracked it. Who would have thought that this would be the bonding moment we really needed? Next morning, first thing I did was inspect the carpet. In the morning light, it still looked damp, but it was difficult to see if it remained stained. Mum, my wife, was next up, and she wandered into the lounge with a coffee for me, placed it on the table. She paused, looked down, and then reaches down and touches the carpet. Just as her face began to get all cross and her mouth began to open, I stopped her with a finger to my lips, pointed upstairs. No. You know how vulnerable and upset he is right now.
Oh, yeah.
Mum looked confused. Is that red wine stain? Yes, here it comes, Father Simon. When Rob went to bed last night, he reached across, he gave me a hug, he accidentally knocked the bottle over. We spent ages clearing it up. Poor lad's devastated. I told him it's all good, don't mention it, for heaven's sake. Well, my wife agreed. Oh, bless him. And that was it. The moment had helped us all bond in an odd way. I wasn't in trouble for spoiling a carpet. Mum was, my wife, was happy, and Rob, what is it, this mum thing? Was happy that Rob was on the mend, and Rob thought it was hilarious that he'd come to the rescue of his clumsy dad. Everyone was happy. Until Sunday night. Once again, we're watching television. Mum brings Rob a glass of water. He reaches across, knocks it off the table, but recovers, barely spilling a drop. Without thinking, his mum smiles and says, "Are you okay, love? What is it with you and knocking things off tables?" Rob's eyes double in size. He slowly turned his gaze to me. "Did you tell Mum it was me that knocked the wine over?" I remained silent. I took up an innocent-looking pose. Needless to say, I got the silent treatment for a few days and also had to then go carpet shopping, a favourite pastime of mine. Having thought I'd done the right thing, it was clearly a bad decision long-term, and I come to you, Father Simon, to seek the ultimate forgiveness for trying to throw my son under the bus in an attempt to bring harmony to the household. Or you could look at it another way, Derek, and just, you were trying to get away with a terrible thing by blaming it on your vulnerable son who'd just been turned down from a job of a lifetime. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, Derek, I think he was a bit jealous, really, of his son, wasn't he, and the attention he was getting. But I do the mum and dad thing. I've started doing that and referring to myself as mum and my other half as dad, just in conversation now. I don't know if that's a thing that happens when you have children, but maybe it's that. But I just don't think I can forgive him, because he was never going to pull the wool over the eyes of his wife or mum. And do you know what? It was just a waste of wine. So for that reason, I'm not going to forgive you.
Very good. There
Waste
speaks
of wine. Oh dear.
someone who lives in a pub.
Yeah, clearly.
Brother Matthew.
Rob sounded a bit tiresome to me with his favourite biscuit and his selection of pizzas and his going to bed early and all of that. I think, frankly, that Derek was well within his rights. And also, he ended up having to go and buy another carpet, which is probably good because I'm not a massive fan of lime green carpets. No. So I think in the end, everyone won, didn't they? Because the carpet shop won and they got a new carpet and probably Rob has got a job now and Derek got some pizzas. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Well, it's the people's verdict, please, because do you forgive? That's the issue. 61054. First word is Simon. But just before the news, we had Derek's confession, whose son Rob was dejected because he didn't get the job he was hoping for. So he went back home to his parents. Derek spilled a whole load of wine in the lounge and blamed his son, who took the blame for a while. Anyway, it was all hushed up and everyone still loves each other in a strange way. What's the people verdict say? What do we have?
Yes, well, Tommy in St Ives says, totally forgive this one. We've all accidentally spilt a bit of wine on the carpet, haven't we? It's a nightmare to get out. I feel like that was punishment enough. But Linda in Weymouth says, not forgiven. Sounds like he was jealous of his son, if you ask me. He was getting all the attention. So bad to blame the poor son. And Jules says, don't forgive, because everybody knows white wine removes red wine stains. If they'd done this, she would never have known.
I don't think that works, does it?
It does work, yeah. Pour white wine on it as well. And then some some of the old stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, now, if you have a confession, that sounds like rubbish to me. And I wouldn't recommend you trying it either. If you have a confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.